All right, team. On this episode of The American Operator, we are joined by Will Fry, founder of Mainshares. On a daily basis, he hangs out, talks to, works with, and makes ownership possible in America by helping current owners and aspiring owners get together with a group of investors and kind of make the whole American dream come true. This is a different kind of episode, though. It's shorter, it's a little more to the point, a little less long form. And the reason I think that's important for you today is because we get right into the depths of what's going on in the economy, everything from tariffs to doomsday AI stuff. By the way, not so doomsday. There's a lot of positives here for small business America if you capitalize on it. Hope you enjoy. Here's the episode. Hard work, real talk, no shortcuts. I'm Joseph Cabrera. This is American Operator. All right, team. We are back here with Will Fry.
I'm here.
Mainshares founder. Here's the deal. We got a lot of comments coming in, some anecdotal stuff. We've had kind of over the Easter weekend, maybe some aunts and uncles talking about the economy come crashing down. What's everybody going to do about it? So I figured we got a guy here who sees and talks to a lot of folks in the small business space. You just want to get some, we used to use this term in the military, atmospherics on what's going on in the world. So just, I'll put this first question out there, man, and then I want to get some thoughts on some other things running through my brain and some folks that are interested or folks that have commented on things. Generally speaking, with all the stuff going down, from tariffs to the S&P 500 and all that stuff there, where do you sit currently right now about small business ownership, people pursuing this path?
I still believe, and probably even more so, that it's the best way to create wealth and to create a better life for your family and whatnot. I think that in light of a lot of tariffs and stuff that we're doing in terms of global trade, being an American small business owner is the best place to be one. I also believe that as we have more of AI eating the world slowly, this is the final frontier. Hopefully it's a frontier forever. We can get into that. But it'll be the last place where, automation is coming for the folks who are fixing toilets, fixing HVAC units, distribution, manufacturing, that sort of thing. So I would say I'm cautiously optimistic on that front, but I think that there's a ton of uncertainty. And in my personal opinion, uncertainty kills deals and economic activity way more than an actual mini recession.
Yeah, I was thinking about a guy I know in town that builds metal buildings. His steel is made here. The siding is made here. All his workforce is here. His pickup trucks are Fords. So like everything this operator does and owner does, it's all stateside bound. So when I think about I guess you can go down the rabbit hole of raw materials and where all this stuff, but assuming all that stuff's sourced here, I got to thinking, oh yeah, the economy right now, generally speaking, doesn't impact. I was also thinking about my father-in-law. We were catching up the other day, talking about mule deer season in Colorado coming up, and he's like, "Are we doing this year or not?" So we were planning it. I was like, "How's business going?" He goes, "Busier than ever," with excavating. And it got me thinking, well, then why are folks stalling or seemingly to stall? And that's got to be emotionally driven, right? More than anything else, it's like they got this cash in the bank, and they just want to know. Not even logically, it's more just like just keep it for a rainy day.
Yep, yeah, I think that's right. I think that there are businesses that are hurting. Spoke with an HVAC owner last week who got the first price hike for HVAC parts. And I know that I was downloading on the conversation I had with an investor on Mainshares this morning, and they're starting to see prices impact their distribution business. And you end up in kind of no man's land where on the one hand you could say, hey, tariffs are going to go into effect, and so I'm going to go buy up a bunch of inventory right now. But if you're a distribution business and you have 5% low margins, you don't have that much cash in the bank, and so buying enough inventory to hold you over for a quarter, you don't have enough money to do that. And even if you did, you're making the bet that there's going to be a buyer for it on the other end. I think that's where I'm personally a little bit concerned, is that even if your supply chain is insulated, if folks' retirements have gotten wiped a little bit, bonds aren't where they're supposed to be, does it lead to less transaction activity. So in the housing market, fewer people are like buying homes because they don't know exactly where things are going to land. Does that impact the steel builder? I don't know. I think there's some parallels to COVID. I wasn't in this space in '08, so I can't speak to how that played out. But during COVID, what happened was for some businesses they're benefited, some businesses were hurt. But the general undertone is that people just slow played everything.
Yeah.
They just don't know what's going to happen.
That's a good point. The interconnectivity. It might not be you, but the 3 domino pieces that you're potentially whatever happens to you.
Yeah.
Yeah. I asked a business owner about '08. I was like, "What'd y'all do in '08?" They've been around for a long time, and their whole thing was, well, luckily everything we had, we grew slow and always have. We're very conservative, so as a small business owner, we like all our tractors were paid off and everything. Sure. So we just didn't do as much business that year. The other fellow owners didn't take as many distributions, but we just kind of weathered it. And I suppose that's where that reserve is coming from, which unfortunately impacts like that fuel into the economy to kind of have people going. If you were somebody right now and looking at, like on the sales side, like as an owner, if you were an owner, are you kind of holding out, or are you saying, hey man, if someone's willing to buy it now, it's probably a good time ever to get rid of it?
I personally would want to sell. If I'm thinking about selling sometime in the next 2 to 3 years, I would do it as quickly as I could probably. You just have no idea. To your point about interconnectedness, Doge shuts down an agency that was a big buyer to one of your customers. They then lose revenue, so they can't pay the same amount for parts or whatever your business does. There's so much uncertainty and chaos happening right now that if you can sell today, I probably would. I think other folks will say, hey, I want to weather the storm, or I don't know what's going to happen to the stock market, and my business is making me money right now, so I'm not going to let it go until I see my savings recover. That's what we saw in COVID, is that people's retirement accounts were impacted. Their house was worth less than before. And so the math of how much do I need to retire with my spouse and move to Florida or whatever you want to do, they couldn't fill that gap with how much their business was worth, so they just held and just kept on operating it.
Yeah.
I do think that there's a good point that Kyle Miller, he's an investor in a bunch of these SMBs, brought up. I was asking him about how does he compare small business to real estate, and then how does the economy affect his outlook. One of the cool things about small businesses, which you can look at it cool or not cool depending on which side you're on, is that you can let people go. And so like if you're thinking about investing in real estate and the economy's going poorly, you can't change your loan payment.
Well, if you go get a new one, good luck. It's going to be worse.
It's going to be worse. And if your customers are having job loss, so your tenants, you're going to have to go try to replace those tenants, and you're going to have vacancies, and it's going to really mess up with your financial model. Your hands are kind of tied. Whereas at least on the small business side, regardless of whether you acquired the business or you've been operating the business for a while, as the economy goes up and down, you can kind of rev up and slow down the business to just stay alive. And I think that's one of the interesting things about small businesses, that you don't necessarily have that dynamic with other things like real estate.
Yeah. And I think you end up having this, like it's interesting, the whiplash that kind of comes from some of those decisions that kind of get made. And it's almost like, especially in the real estate world, like where it's almost like you stomp out like a little anthill and then things just run, whatever. And it's like if folks can just kind of practice some basic discipline, they'd almost like be able to just weather correctly and those kinds of things. Is one thing that I always appreciate about the conversations that we have around this building here, just getting folks to look at that business holistically in a situation where like if you had to weather, could you, those kinds of things. I think that unfortunately, like a lot of the rhetoric we've had for the last decade has been about kind of running really close to the sun.
Yep.
And then something like this happens, and then you're kind of in the dump.
100%. And I think about it a lot for anyone who's operating, for instance, like a general contracting company. This is where like a lot of the financial jargon starts to actually matter. So if you have high customer concentration, you're working for a couple developers and they account for a majority of your revenue, it takes one of them to fall and not make due on your accounts receivable, the money they owe you for whatever general contracting work you do, and then you could potentially flame out. because you still have to pay your payroll and you still have to pay your suppliers. And so you start to understand where some of these concepts actually matter when you're operating the business. It's not just on the way in when you're analyzing the market or thinking about buying a business. Things like customer concentration, how quickly you're getting paid, it matters when shit starts to hit the fan, or it looks like it is. And so that's where today, if I'm in the shoes of an owner, I want to really understand, put myself in the shoes of my customers and understand, okay, if XYZ happens, how are they going to play out and how does it impact me? And are there any things I can be doing right now, whether it's increasing my cash reserves, pulling forward a little bit of inventory, potentially restructuring the team slightly to at least make sure that my back isn't against the wall as soon as something slightly ticks down.
Hey y'all, if you're enjoying the conversations and what you're hearing, do me a solid, like and subscribe. America's depending on you. What do you think about those folks that are climbing a corporate ladder? They might be going like, oh man, I wanted to jump into this world, be my own owner, get my little piece of the American pie. Maybe I need to stay here with what's safe.
Yeah.
Like, what would you say to folks like that?
Nothing safe.
You're going to get AI'd out.
Yeah. Yeah. I don't know. I think that if you have the itch to do something entrepreneurial, now is a great time to do it. I think that there's a big kind of pro-America sentiment. I also think that typically the worst time to do it is at the top of a cycle. The folks that we knew that bought businesses when the market was kind of like a little bit of a bubble in 2021, then rates went up and then all of a sudden the business isn't doing quite as well as you thought it was going to do. One of our clients bought a termite business in Los Angeles, closed on it, looked like it was going great. It turned out it was just because of like the COVID bump in real estate when everyone was like moving out of New York and San Francisco. And so the home transactions fell down. So termite inspections fell down and he's okay. But I think sometimes when things look the rosiest, you're really kind of buying the top. So I would encourage people to go do what they want to do now because, don't have tomorrow.
You don't have it. I mean, there's also that, what is that saying? People say, you get hit by a bus tomorrow and then see what happens. I think that when you also think about, when you think about like folks that are leaving, they go like, this is a good time to jump. You mentioned something that I think doesn't always click with folks because it's not something they've sat in before, which is the owner's seat. The owners in these moments start to go like, oh man, I was trying to retire this year.
Right.
And so they actually have this emotional fatigue where they're like, you know what, I will give you a good deal just to make sure it's gone.
Yeah.
So I think there's an opportunity there, just like anything, even with real estate or whatever. Usually in these tumultuous times, folks that have the ability to go get in on it can get probably the best deal they possibly can.
Yeah, and you'll find there are probably tens of thousands, if not more, owners who wanted to retire in 2020, delayed it because of the pandemic. Pandemic ended, then they were told by their advisors or the lenders, hey, you need to show at least 2 years of back to normal life. They've done that. Now they're staring down the barrel of Lord knows what's in front of us, and they're not going to wait another cycle. I don't know what you call this, but they're ready to go. So that's definitely true.
Yeah. What's exciting to you right now? What's something that you get to see here on a daily basis that gives you hope, promise, general excitement?
When AI tools mess up. No. I think generally speaking, seeing people buy a business or start one and love it is really, really cool. Because I think a lot of people think they like the idea of ownership and then they get in the seat and they realize it's not all it's cracked up to be, or the industry that they join isn't that great. So I think seeing people thrive and find meaning and purpose and hearing about that is really rewarding. I also think from where we sit as a company, seeing investors and operators work together and really enjoy that's rewarding. I think in terms of like the kind of like day-to-day SMB happenings, I think we're just at a period of time right now where things are a little bit chaotic. I know the SBA a couple hours ago released new regulations that are going to change things up a little bit for anyone trying to get an owner to roll equity. So I think there's some chaos on that side, but I would say like the day-to-day pulse on Main Street America is still very strong, and people are still achieving their personal and professional goals and having an impact and enjoying what they do, and that's really rewarding.
Yeah. Yeah, you see it, you feel it. I know there's that tension. We actually just had a group of aspiring owners kind of come through the building a few weeks back, and it is interesting to see. About half of them are running away from something, which is interesting, and then the other half are running, to something.
Yeah.
And the to something folk, it's a night and day shift. And what I find to be interesting is that also can be kind of the main ingredient for success.
Yeah.
It's just like, building momentum versus trying to conserve energy.
Right.
Any advice you'd give to somebody right now, or any things that you've noticed on that front from aspiring owners or folks that are trying to get in the ownership seat, that you go, pattern recognition tells me that these folks generally are going to do well, whatever the business might be, assuming it's healthy.
Yeah.
Versus the other folks are like, hey, man, you probably don't got it.
Yeah, I think it comes down to being aggressive, being willing to bet on yourself, and not looking for reasons to say no. Like, try to get to yes. Don't always try to figure out why this won't work out for you. So, for instance, Patrick, who I know you've had on the pod and did that really cool day in life interview, his buy box is way lower than most of these first-time buyers in terms of how small he'll buy. Similarly, Scott Kendall, who's friends with Alex Chavez upstairs, he bought a $150,000 revenue sanitation business, porta potty business in Vegas. It's now the top porta potty business in Vegas. He grew it to over $3.6 million in revenue in like a year or two.
Yeah, man.
So that's just like a different breed of, I'm going to get after it. I'm going to figure this thing out. I've used a porta potty, but I've never owned a porta potty business before. And I don't need this thing to be printing $1 million of cash flow. I'm going to get in there and bet on myself. And so I think those people always win. I think the folks looking for some type of financial investment play where they do it for 6 months and then put in a GM and they're only focused on the numbers and not the actual how of how the business works. How can I grow this thing? Those folks, I think, end up either never transacting or they transact on something that they realize they don't actually love the meat and potatoes of the day to day.
Yeah, there's a couple folks I've spoke with recently that really get the SD, the EBITDA, just the profit. For those listening in that wondering what those letters mean, the net of what you're left over at the end of the day. It's funny how much that is driven by how much is that going to continue to maintain their corporate lifestyle.
Yeah.
And you're just like, there's a part of me that cringes at that, not because it's not human. I understand the human component of it, but it's like if they recognized that if they could get into something and grow it to this $3.6 million Porta-John business.
Sure.
It would dwarf whatever they're doing.
Oh, yeah.
Just this level of initial sacrifice. I have this mentor of mine that he goes, man, most people never get to their full potential because of their personal OPEX.
Yeah.
And he goes, it's just weird what you're not willing to give up for a couple years to achieve a life you've never even dreamed of before. And he's like, but you can't get there unless you got those things in order. And I'm just fascinated how that's the
100%.
driving factor.
100%. There's a lady I used to work with, this was like 10, 11 years ago, and she recently posted this on LinkedIn, which was she was starting a company and did a blog post of all the expenses she cut out of her life to get the thing off the ground.
Yeah,
I think
man.
for 8 months she took zero salary and then she started taking a small salary. Very few people have the discipline to do that, but it's cool to see.
Nice.
And it's also cool to see people get rewarded for doing it.
Yeah, it's the fundamentals.
Yeah.
Well,
it's
what
lifestyle creep.
It's the lifestyle creep.
It's real.
Yeah, it's funny. You want to go pursue this path, and it's not all trades businesses, but it's kind of this work with your hands, roll up your sleeves kind of business, yet you still kind of want to drive the 5 Series to work.
Yeah.
And it's like, oddly enough, you should probably sell the 5 Series and go buy a 2007 pickup truck. Like, you probably get a lot of street cred, and then you also probably end up finding yourself in a situation where you can just go.
For
as
sure.
long as you're not replacing a transmission anytime soon or anything.
I didn't take this advice. Girdley drives a Honda Civic.
That's real.
He has like a great holding company. I think it's like $100 million in San Antonio. Just rocks a Civic.
Yeah, that's my favorite.
So.
Well, what right now would you say, anybody right now in this world, and especially as we're got a couple minutes left here, just to kind of be aware of, like things that you'd give some orange flags to?
I think anything that's overly exposed to China, I'd be worried about that. I think the other tariffs at some point will go away. I don't think that we want to onshore jobs making Nike shoes. I understand we want to fix a trade imbalance, but I don't think those are here to stay too long. So, but China, I think, will be a kind of a prolonged trade conflict. Anything that's overly exposed to the government, I'd be really worried about. I think that there are certain sectors that are probably fine. So, for instance, I think a decent amount of defense spending in that supply chain probably fine. I think a lot of the stuff that came out of the infrastructure bill also probably fine. But if you're doing outsourced call centers, operations, services for, some of the less critical agencies, I'd be pretty worried. And I think that even extends to things like, the postal. I know we've dealt with a number of businesses that did contracts for like postal service and stuff like that. I would not be surprised if they batten down the hatches. So for there, I think you want to understand A, what agencies do they serve, and then B, where, and if you look at their pipeline of government contracts, what are they doing and who's their actual end customer within the agency? And obviously you have no idea what's going to happen to it, but I would want to build a really compelling case for myself of why that's going to stay and not see a funding cut or get shut down altogether. And I think the third thing is anywhere where AI can overly impact your prices or margins, I think for the most of the businesses that we deal with, they're fine and they're going to be fine for a while. Even the more white collar knowledge working, whether it's marketing agencies, consultancies, because theoretically AI can do part of those jobs, but a lot of what you're selling is service and customer relationships with other small business owners or individuals. And so I think hopefully for a long time in the future, you're still going to be all right. But there may be some kind of niches, especially if you look on more like online businesses or e-commerce businesses where maybe you're a little bit more exposed to the AI.
Yeah, I do think when it comes to, maybe we can go down two quick rabbit holes. One on the AI, for instance, the last thing you talked about here. Do you think that it seems to be this wave of catch up now, right? I think that it probably was like what the internet was back in the day, or even smartphones, or it's now reached kind of almost critical mass for the get it factor is today. You're either going to understand how it impacts you or how you're not, or you'll be kind of carpet pulled behind it.
Yeah.
What's something that even your own journey of understanding artificial intelligence and how that all works out that you didn't appreciate even just 6 months ago that now you go, okay, that's meaningful?
I think it was probably, at least in my own personal journey, I'm somewhat technical. So I played with ChatGPT when it came out and was all over the internet. And it was okay, this is a cool gimmicky toy. It's wrong a lot of the times, but it feels like you're kind of chatting with a human, whatever. And I just threw it out the window. And then now I've seen these more domain specific applications of it, or even deep research where it is blowing my mind. And you can read the code that it generates and the code is relatively clean, relatively correct. It works. And so then you kind of play that out. And that's where you can kind of become a little bit of a doomer, which I think I've gotten red pilled. But you play that out and then you realize, okay, what does this mean for the workforce? I think hopefully we don't end up in a world where the economy's wrecked. But I've convinced myself too much time on the weekends that if you have a country like Thailand or the Philippines where they have a large outsourced piece of the economy, and you are able to replace them, what happens to that country? That's a depression that you don't ever come back from.
Yeah. Because where do they go? What do they do?
Exactly. Yeah. And then if you play it out domestically, let's say that you have that happening to knowledge workers. Those knowledge workers are typically the upper class of society who are the ones traveling. So their ability to pay for, you could say, okay, well, maybe Thailand and the Philippines, tourism is going to be okay. Well, if all of a sudden you have wage compression for knowledge workers in the Western countries, they're not traveling there anymore. And so I've had a lot of conversations about this with a lot of people. And I think the hope is energy prices increase, so it's more expensive to run AI than you think. and you hope that larger companies take longer to adopt it, and that somehow we figure our way out. Because you can make the argument of, okay, this happened in every other previous revolution. This time will be no different. We'll be all right. Because there are people blowing up factories in the 1800s trying to fight against the Industrial Revolution. They all got jobs in it. But if you double click on it, it took 20 to 30 years for that to kind of play out, for steel mills to come in or the internet to actually get rolled out. Like, we didn't have a smartphone for a long time. A lot of people didn't even have some people still don't have websites. The difference here is it's like a year. It's like a year and a half. You're not giving enough people time. And you may want to cut this because I can get really doomy. Then you think about, like, in Austin, we have Waymo, right? Waymo's already picking you up. Truckers is the number one or number two occupation in the United States. So, like, as soon as, like, the federal government decides, hey, it's past our risk tolerance and we're going to allow it, you have, like, massive dislocation in the workforce and disenfranchisement of people. So then what happens? Do you have a state like New Jersey where they force you to let someone pump your gas, not because you need them to pump your gas, but it's like this weird, like, hey, we're going to give you meaning. You're going to pump gas despite a machine being able to do it better. I don't know. We'll find out.
No, it's something worth, I think, scratching into. Well, with that said, everybody, we will shut down our fireside chat here. No, I think, but I do think it's stuff that's interesting to think about. I also think it's interesting to kind of know, like, in this space, when and how that applies to you. I think this is what we, get obsessed with the business you are operating or the business you're about to buy, because I think that's where you'll really understand where those levers are. And if anything, also, it's a really good booster for some folks. There's a lot of these old timers, they're like, oh, yeah, I know I could get more revenue in if I just did some Tic Tacs and stuff. And you go, well, okay, well, you can utilize these tools. Totally. And you can have somebody on your team who's somewhat savvy. And you know what? You just probably brought in another 5% in rev this month because you used that.
For most small businesses, I think the next 5-10 years will be amazing using these AI tools, especially if you're willing to play around with them. Dominic Blue, who's a vet who bought a couple HVAC businesses, is actually running a consultancy where he shows small business owners how to use artificial intelligence in their business, and that's really cool. So I'd say, like, definitely play around with it, figure out how it can work for you, but don't teach it too much. You know?
Withhold some of that information. William Fry, it's always good having you on. Any parting thoughts or things that you want to leave this group with? I like doing this. We don't have a fire here, but if you're listening in, fireside chat.
I don't know. I think my only parting thought is I wake up more and more these days, like, very lucky and grateful I'm American. Yeah. Sounds kind of weird, but won the genetic lottery.
I know, man. I think as great, that makes two of us, just how grateful we are to be here. And it's not just the business stuff. It's the mindset. It's these folks, man, that, like, we had this guy the other day, man, he just, like, abandoned his very well funded, I mean, he made a lot of money in corporate America and could keep doing it.
Yeah.
And it's just like, imagine the guts you have to have. It's like a child jumping off the bed knowing that their parent will catch them. It's probably a little bit too personal there, but, like, it's the same thing. People are like, I'm going to abandon this really well-paying job because this country's got me if I'm willing to just put the work in. That's kind of cool. There's a lot of other places to be like, are you nuts?
100%.
Yeah.
100%. And for folks to root you on. I think that's one of the coolest parts, is that the country values independence and hard work and merit and all of that stuff. And you're not, I mean, in France, you can read so many news articles of, like, the entrepreneur class is, like, ridiculed and whatnot. And here you're celebrated and you're encouraged. And I think that's what makes the country so special. So,
yeah, man, really dig having you on. We'll have you on again. Just kind of, I like these little updates and things like that.
Hopefully I didn't derail this one too much.
Heck no, man. No, this is what we want, man. This was through popular demand. And at the very least, you address that one person being like, AI, and they're like, okay, chill out.
Maybe.
Or not chill out.
Awesome. Thanks, JC.
Yeah, thanks, Will. Thanks for tuning in to the American Operator Podcast, where we celebrate the backbone of America, small business owners and operators like you. If you've enjoyed today's episode, be sure to subscribe so you'll never miss out on more of these stories and insights from people who keep our community strong. Until next time, keep building, keep operating, and keep America moving forward.